These D4 developer live streams can have a ton of great information, and this most recent one has some absolute shockers in it, but there is also a lot of fluff and just a lot of repeat information. And also these developer live streams can quite often be several hours long. So what I went ahead and did for all you, the viewers out there, cut out all the fluff, cut out the repeat information, and cut out just anything that I didn't think was really vital information you needed to know from this developer live stream, cutting it down from several hours to just barely over 45 minutes. This type of video idea you like, make sure you hit that like button and watch the video all the way to the end. Now, no more time to waste. Let's jump in.
Season 4 PTR is actually going to start on April 2nd, and it's actually going to run for a week through April 9th. Now, I know a lot of people are probably asking, like, hey, that seems pretty close to the end of Season 3. Is that enough time for you guys to actually react to, the feedback that we're going to be getting from PTR? And I will note here that we do plan on actually extending Season 3 for this. So Season 3 is actually going to have a new end date. We're pushing it back a few weeks to ensure that we get all the feedback from this PTR, and we apply it to Season 4 to make sure that all these new system changes that we're doing are right and work for the community based off of everyone's feedback. So Season 3 is now going to end on May 14th. And of course, with that, Season 4 also starts on May 14th. One other note is that, again, PTR itself is specifically for PC Battle.net only. So there will be PTR boosting features available for players that are jumping into PTR. You will be able to boost a character immediately up to 100. When you do that, you will receive 100 million gold and 1,000 obols. You can do this multiple times. You can even trade amongst gold across your characters, of course. And then we will also mark the campaign completed for your character, as well as offering you a mount, all your skill points, and more. Skill points again. Paragon, Fog of War will be completely cleared. Altar of Lilith points will also be cleared. It's actually going to match the Renown progress on your original Diablo 4 account. So if you've already done all your Renown rewards and everything, you'll end up getting that completely covered off on your character for PTR. And of course, all the class system mechanics, things like Enchantment for Sorcerer or like Book of the Dead stuff will be enabled for you for this character that you end up creating for PTR or any other characters that you create. And then all your Paragon glyphs will be unlocked and legendary drop rates will be doubled. There are like a few things that will be not present in PTR, but that is like, for example, one of the things is Codex of Power, but we'll explain why here in a minute. There's some more details related to Codex of Power for players to kind of understand why that's not present there.
The changes we're talking about today are all going to be on the Eternal Realm and on the Seasonal Realm. We're not actually talking about the season specifically today. We're really talking about this massive item update and these other updates that are happening kind of in parallel to season development during this time.
So our number one main goal here is to focus on quality of items over quantity of items. The second goal we have here is that the best items in the game, the really pinnacle ones that you get at the end game, they have a journey associated with them. And the third goal that we have here is to focus on moments of surprise and delight in the itemization chase. So with that, we have a number of topics within the itemization update. So the overview here is that we've got updates to existing systems, such as base items updates. We've got a few additional updates that are kind of adjacent to the itemization system. We've got some updates to Codex of Power, which we sort of alluded to earlier, and I think those are going to be some really big wins. We also have some new systems being introduced here. We've got Tempering, which is going to be a new customization system. Greater affixes, which help to provide some chase in the end game. These are going to be some of those powerful items, ones that have greater affixes. And then once you do reach that end game with great gear, you're going to be able to masterwork it to really unlock its full potential and upgrade it to the best possible version that it can be. So let's hop into some of the base item updates. So this is where we're going to focus on making a smaller pool of affixes that are more relevant and more potent for your specific build. So as I kind of mentioned earlier in the goals section, a lot of the affixes and stats that appear on items, they were often very conditional, right? You had like damage while berserking or damage to close enemies or things that were hyper specific and ultimately just were kind of meaningless in a lot of ways. They blended together. We're really focused in this rework, we're focusing on reducing that pool of affixes to be more general. They're more applicable to a lot of builds. They're not going to be this hyper specific conditional, and they're going to be more potent. So some examples here, we've got ranks of a single core skill. Sometimes on gear, you would find items that have, ranks of Upheaval, ranks of Whirlwind, and ranks of Double Swing, all on the same item. And almost no build wants all three of those things at once. So we've made it so that, hey, only one of these can appear. That makes just the subset of items that you find much more likely to be relevant for you. And in terms of being more potent, we're looking at things like in World Tier 3, only sacred items are going to appear. And then once you get into World Tier 4, only ancestral, only those most powerful versions of items will appear. This means you're just getting less junk, right? Sometimes you get, sacred items in World Tier 4, and that never felt great because, hey, I'm in World Tier 4, I should be getting the best items now. We also did a pass on the affix values to make sure they're a bit punchier, that, you can feel it when you really equip an item. This often was just, some numerical tuning. In the past, you might get an item that said, plus 2% critical strike chance, and honestly, it was hard to ever notice that. Or like plus, 5% damage or something like that. And those really small values were just hard to ever notice when you're swapping it, and it never felt like you got to upgrade your gear. So let's take a look at some examples here. The other update is that we are reducing the total number of affixes on gear that initially drops. So legendary items used to drop with 4 affixes, 4 lines of stats. That's going down to 3. And then rare items, the yellow items used to have up to 4, and now they'll just go down to 2. The goal here, once again, is to really focus on the quality of the affixes that appear on the gear rather than just the pure quantity. And this also gives us room to build on it in some of the later crafting and tempering systems. You are going to get more affixes, but the base item is going to start with a little bit less just so we have room to grow.
one of the changes that we're making in response to this also, like we know that right now, like rare items are the items that players are using to trade in situations where you find like a really, really powerful template item. So you know, max roll helmet with CDR and such, right? Like these are still really important for players. So as part of this change, we are going to open up trading to allow legendary items and unique items to also be tradable in the starting in season 4. This is a big change for us. Now, one distinction here to keep people on, to let people keep this in mind, is that crafting on either of these items, whether you're going to be tempering or masterworking or anything else later on down the road, these things like enchanting does today, these make these items account bound. So you can't trade them once you get them after you've done some crafting on them. So we think this does a great job of making sure that the trade economy is still interesting, and that when you're looking for a specific item or an item is dropped for you that a friend can use, it's going to be a lot easier for you to go and hand those things around now.
A lot of people might have saw this and thought, oh, rare items are now, how can I trade it? But now you can still be trading these legendary items that you find if they're useful for you, or you think they might be useful for a friend.
Oh, and also, I should say also, uber unique items are not going to be tradable in season 4.
Everything that isn't uber.
Yeah, everything is not uber unique.
Uber unique, yeah. Those are the most powerful items, and if you want those, you're gonna have to go and find them yourself.
That's right.
Those are the most powerful items in the game there. All right, so let's take a look at a closer example here. So we've got, kind of on the left, before, this is a boned wand restoration. This was before our update. This is what you could currently get on live. And you can see how it's got, plus intelligence, vulnerable damage, damage to shadow damage over time affected enemies. That is a mouthful. Same with the lucky hit, chance to execute injured non-elites. These are the really hyper-specific affixes that we're talking about that really bloat items. It takes a while to parse this. Like you just can't at a glance tell, hey, is this even good for me?
Yeah, reading through a number of conditional additive damage modifiers is like when you're like item to item, it's just very, it is taxing.
Especially when you really fill up your inventory with 30 plus of these items, trying to sort through them all at once when you just really want to get back into the action, right? You want to get back into fighting demons. So after this itemization update in the after section here, we've got a similar item. It has intelligence. It has plus damage. That just applies to all of your damage. It's not hyper specific. And we still do get you give you a larger bonus if you're hitting vulnerable enemies with this. And
Can you get an item now that gives you like int, dex, and strength on it?
No, in fact, because this wand is just has intelligence on it, it is just the main stat for your class. So if you are a sorcerer, you're only going to find intelligence on items. If you're a bard, you're only going to find strength, and so on.
I can still find all stat, right?
Yes, yeah, you still have all stat, but no more. You're going to find, oh, I got intellect on my barbarian. That's just basically a completely dead stat for you. All right, so let's talk about some of the other additional updates that are kind of adjacent to the main itemization updates. Legendary item drops from monsters that are level 95 or higher are always going to be at item power 925. That is the highest item power in the game. And once you're really facing the toughest monsters in the game, we want to make sure that you're constantly getting the best possible items. This really comes back to our idea of quality over quantity. Once you're at this point of the game, you don't really care about anything that isn't 925. So why are we dropping that for you, right? You're going to be kind of graduating out of caring about item power because you just know that everything I'm getting is the maximum item power. Next, we've done a pass to update our gems. They are a little bit simpler. Some of the gems used to have, once again, those very conditional things like critical strike damage to vulnerable enemies was like one stat on one gem. So we kind of simplified it. So we now just have bonus critical strike damage or bonus vulnerable damage. We've also added some updates to have core stats on them. So some of the gems will have strength, some will have dex, and so on. And they'll have a little bit of a longer crafting tail. They're a bit more powerful at the top end, but they do require a bit more investment to really unlock that highest power level. And once you have all the gems that you want, excess gems will now sell for quite a bit more gold. So that way you're not really going to waste once you have kind of found those best gems. Additionally, we've done a pass on the salvage, crafting, and rewards have all been retuned for this new world where we're dropping less items than before. Once again, we're focusing on you have less time sorting through your inventory and more time getting back in action, more time slaying enemies to find those items.
Yeah, there's much less corrupt in this version of the feature, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not walking out of a nightmare dungeon with 25 items. You have to go and deal with it back at the blacksmith.
But the ones that you do have are much more likely to be relevant and useful to you when you do find them. Additionally, we've item rerolling, the enchanting system at the occultist. We know this has been it has like a scaling gold cost currently, and that just keeps on ramping up. If you want to keep fishing for that perfect affix, it could cost millions upon millions upon millions of gold. We put a cap on that. We don't think it's really healthy to have that actually scale infinitely. It'll still get a little high, but it's not going to go to infinity. We've taken a pass on the materials, the crafting materials, things like ore and herbs, and some of the other crafting materials in the game. And a lot of the ones we had some variety of like common herbs. So that were found in different zones, and there was some nice flavor there, but ultimately they didn't really provide much compelling gameplay. So we've consolidated all of like the common crafting materials into just a single type, just basically common herbs. And then there's still some rare ones to find to craft the most powerful elixirs and so on. But we've simplified that system so your collection is a little bit easier and more streamlined.
Yeah, we also removed things like there's like a lot of monster parts like Pale Tongue and things like that are also have been removed as part of this experience. It's gonna make it a lot easier to craft elixirs in this new world.
Absolutely.
So, you don't have to scroll through that tab so long to see exactly the material you want to craft with. Yeah.
Especially when they ultimately just fed towards that same goal. And then the final update we've got is updates to the Forgotten Souls, right? So the late game crafting material that you use for a lot of the enchanting or other crafting systems. We're making them a little more accessible. They'll come from Whispers of the Dead caches, and they can also rarely drop globally from any elite in the game. And this is a really cool moment that you kind of have this jackpot moment. It's pretty rare when you kill elites, but there's a moment where you just get like this explosion of loot, and it spits out a ton of the Forgotten Souls or other loot or other crafting materials. And that's a really exciting moment when you encounter it in game. It's pretty rare, but you kind of hit the jackpot when that does happen.
And for Forgotten Souls, that can happen outside of Helltide, right?
Oh yeah, that can happen on literally any elite in the game.
Yep.
Also, we're looking at updating our uniques. So unique items are, these really build-defining, flashy, unique items, right? They are very powerful. Currently, they're locked behind just World Tier 3 and onward. They're really late-game items. And we thought that to really get you into the fun faster, to get your build online, we've made it so that many of our uniques in the game can now start dropping in World Tiers 1 and 2. So you can start getting them earlier on in the experience and really get your build going much quicker. And then once you do get into World Tier 3, then all of the uniques in the game have the potential to start dropping, including Uber uniques, which are typically those very late game chase items. There is a chance that monsters starting at level 55 drop these Uber uniques. It's a pretty small chance. It's very rare, but it's one of those moments that you're going to find, if you're really lucky, you might find a Harlequin's Crest at level 55.
You'll remember that playthrough for sure.
Oh, you definitely will, right? And of course, they'll drop.
I was going to say, kind of going back to our goals of itemization's update in general, is that, like at any time, something really exciting can happen, right? That's the main impetus for doing this, is that even early on in the game, you can get the main thing that you're looking for. It's going to be very rare, not very common, but it's possible. Even some of our other updates coming that you're going to explain is kind of going along that vein, right?
Absolutely, yeah. We want you to have the chance to really have that high roll moment, that really exciting moment when you find that awesome loot. So that covers the additional updates. We've got to talk about the Codex of Power, right? So the Codex of Power is a system that has been in the game since launch, and we're making a big update here, where now all legendary aspects in the game will start appearing in the Codex of Power. Every single one. Previously, it was just a small subset. And I believe we even have some in-game footage that we can talk and go through an example of what this looks like.
Yeah, we'll jump over to that. We have behind the scenes, we actually have Ruben, aka Bloodshed, former content creator, now a part of the Blizzard team here on Diablo. He's actually driving us through our build here, but he will be driving through all our little demos that we have today. So
yeah, awesome. Yeah, so you can see in our inventory right now, we've got Edgemaster's Siege Bow. And this has a little icon on it in the upper right in your inventory there. And that indicates that if you salvage this legendary, it will upgrade an aspect in the Codex of Power when you salvage it.
That's right. So you no longer need to go to the occultist to extract aspects in any way, because aspect crystals are no longer a thing in this new version of the Codex of Power.
Yeah, aspect crystals are gone. It's just when you salvage the legendary, it will upgrade it. So we salvage it, we can see that Edgemaster's aspect has been upgraded in the Codex of Power. So we go to our Codex of Power and let's go take a look. So we've got Edgemaster's aspect here. That skills deal up to 6% increased damage based on your available resource when cast. So that is the kind of legendary rank of the one that we just salvaged. Now this says 6% here. In game it was 12% because it was on a two-handed bow, and that doubles the range. But you can see it's not a minimum roll. Right now on live Diablo 4, it's always just a minimum roll. And so once you find something better, a better aspect crystal, the Codex is kind of relevant. Now the Codex will continue being relevant because every time you find a higher roll of it, it's going to upgrade your Codex, and you can continually re-imprint this legendary power onto any gear that you find going forward.
That's right. So if Ruben finds a 10% roll, on something else, then that is now going to, he can go ahead and salvage that item down. That 10% version is now going to replace the 6% version he has right now, and that's the new version that you have. So when we're talking about upgrading, what we really mean is, like, as you find the better versions of these aspects, they replace the older ones. Now every time you decide you want to imprint the Codex of Power, that's going to be the version that you get from that point forward.
So if you find a max roll the first time, are you just super lucky? You have it forever?
You are super lucky, and you would have that forever. Yes, you can continue to imprint it. However, the ranks of legendaries, you won't be able to find a max roll of these legendaries in World Tiers 1 and 2 when you're just starting out your journey. We have extended the range, so a lot of legendaries used to say, hypothetically, if a legendary rolled between 20% and 30%, now we've extended that range from 20 to 35%, but those like 30 to 35%, the highest range, the most powerful versions, those are only going to be accessible in World Tier 4 in the later game. So this does give you a bit more of progression. So you can find it early and you can upgrade it, but then you're going to find even better versions as you progress through the World Tiers.
And if we actually, can we go back to the build really quickly? Because, Ruben, if you can pull up the Codex of Power really quickly.
Show the UI a little bit here.
Because one big thing is, like, I know we glazed over this really quickly, but there are filters, ways of searching through everything, which is really nice. And then, of course, on the icons as well, I think people are probably seeing these numbers associated. I know it's something that is changed, obviously, with this new Codex of Power, where it's showcasing, like, hey, there's a gold version of Aspect of Quickening Fog right there, which is already showcasing, hey, you have it completely maxed at 16 out of 16. And, of course, there's different ranks as you're kind of, like, leveling up throughout the Codex of Power and finding different aspects.
Yeah, I really love that gold border to really indicate that, hey, you found the best version, you've kind of completed this. And some of them, you kind of cheat on it, right? Things that only have one rank. As soon as you unlock it, you get the best version.
Yeah, that's example one that you could max out in World Tier 1.
But most of them have now, up to 16 ranks is kind of our standard, for the most part. And those highest ranks are just going to be in the later world tiers.
And for a lot of these aspects, too, when we went to 16 ranks on these, we actually extended the value, the power of these, and potency of these aspects upwards. Right? We didn't water it down. We actually extended it up.
Yeah, for the most part, these have increased in power at the highest level, just to make them really rewarding in World Tier 4 when you find them.
And I'm sure there's people asking specifically about, hey, is this a seasonal thing? Is this an eternal thing?
This is everywhere forever. This is the new world.
This is the new world.
That's right. All the updates we're talking about today, once again, are for the Eternal Realm and for the Seasonal Realm.
All right, so that was a ton on the systems that already exist in the game, right? The base item affixes, the other updates, and Codex of Power. But there's also new systems coming.
We're not done with that.
That was updates to existing things, but we have got a lot of new stuff. So let's talk about tempering. Tempering is a new crafting system that will allow you to add really cool new affixes to your items. And so I really just want to highlight that this is not just taking those old really conditional nitty-gritty aspects or affixes. This also includes a lot of really new exciting affixes as well that we'll showcase a bit later. Things like a chance to cast bonus projectiles, increased effect size of your skills, and other ways of talking directly to individual skills. A lot of this lives in tempering. And so this way you can really customize your character, specifically to your build and the skills that you're using and the way you want to play. So you might be asking, well, how do we temper? We've got tempering manuals. So these are items, manuals that are going to drop from most content in the game. This isn't something you need to go target farm. You're just going to find these as you're playing. And these manuals are going to be a list of possible affixes that are kind of themed to individual builds. So if you are a bone necro, for instance, the manual for bone necro might have things specifically to bone spear and bone splinters and bone spirit. When you do the tempering, which is done at the blacksmith, it will attach a random one of the affixes from that manual onto the item that you're tempering. And if you don't get the exact one that you want, or you don't get the roll that you want, you can re-roll these affixes up to the item's tempering durability. Now, this is a lot without an example, so I think we've got an example where we can just
show
walk
people what it
through,
looks
right? Yeah, so here's some screenshot examples of the actual recipes that appear. So on the left, we've got the Manual of Natural Motion. This is a generic recipe that really applies to any class. It's got a variety of movement speed options on it. So you've got, you might just attach movement speed to your gear. Maybe you get a higher value of movement speed, but only after you kill an elite. We have the option to reduce your evade cooldown or give you mobility skill cooldown reduction. We've tagged a lot of skills in the game with mobility tag when things like teleport or charge. And then on the right, we've got one that is more specific to necromancers, because this is the bone necro one that I mentioned before. So we've got a chance for bone splinter projectiles to cast twice, chance for bone spear projectiles to cast twice, increase the size of your bone spirit explosion, or increase the duration of your bone storm. So if you're a bone necro, one of these is probably going to be pretty relevant to you and would be really a cool way of customizing your character and your skills. So here's an example of the UI. So on the left, we've got this Choker of Ancestral Charge, one of my favorite legendaries, currently on Season 3. And so it's got the relatively simpler affixes. It's got just max life, damage, and critical strike chance. And we go to the blacksmith, we put it into the menu here, and we can see that there are kind of 6 categories, with 5 of them being highlighted. These categories are the categories of recipes. So each recipe corresponds to one of these categories. On amulets, you can put anything except the weapons category. So that's why offensive, defensive, utility, mobility, and resource are all highlighted here. And once we go through this, we can do this twice because most items can only be tempered once. You can get just one affix on them. But ancestral items, these really late game World Tier 4 items, can be tempered twice from 2 separate categories. So you can't put, say, 2 defensive ones on there. You're going to diversify. And in this case, we've got charge cooldown reduction added on the right. And we've also got some bonus damage while berserking. So we've got an offensive one here, and then we've got a utility one that gives us the cooldown reduction. Do we have a live example of this, of going through this actual flow, so we can kind of show you what this ends up looking like?
Yep. Once again, yep. That's right there.
Points
in the blacksmith.
Yes. So in here we've got our bow of branching volleys. We can put in here because this is a weapon. We can attach ones from the offensive category. And so here's all the examples. We've got 5 different recipes that we've unlocked here, depending on how we want to build our character. So if we want to do, say, marksman skills to put on there, we can do marksman finesse, and this will give us either bonus marksman damage. Why don't we just temper it and see what it looks like? So we get this flashy animation that comes in, and we get to see, hey, we added 29% marksman damage. All right, so a few other things to call out here. Let's actually close this menu and then take a look at when it's in there. We can talk about tempering durability a little bit. So you can see when this is in here, we've got tempered affixes, 1 out of 2, because this is an ancestral item. You can temper it twice from 2 different categories. So you're going to be able to put 1 weapon and 1 offensive on there. And then there's this tempering durability remaining. So this is how many times you can re-roll the tempered affixes. The first ones that you attach should not be consuming tempering durability. Yeah, that's really the goal of tempering is customization and really cool new ways of building your character. That's not just plus damage. There is still some bonus damage as you still need to in order to actually do damage, but there's a lot of ways you can customize your skills and make it really your own.
Now, right now, you can temper legendary items.
Correct.
And rare items, but you can't temper unique items.
Correct. And I think that goes great into our next point where we talk about greater affixes.
Yeah.
So greater affixes are affixes that appear in the late game. They are more powerful versions of the normal affixes, so they come at a 1.5x multiplier on the affixes max roll. So let's say a hypothetical affix might come between like 50 to 100 of a stat. If it rolls greater, then you actually get 150 of that stat instead. Instead of the roll, it always comes in at max, so it comes in at that 150 mark. These are really exciting drops. When you get into the late game, they're going to be immediately obvious. Whenever they drop on the ground, they're going to have a little change to the UI, so you can see it right away, and you know, hey, that one has greater affixes on it. And that's going to be ones that you're really going to want to pick up and make sure that you take a look at, and then you really want to build off of because they're some of the strongest affixes in the game. I think we've got an example here, and one other note, these, as I mentioned, they're late game. They only appear on ancestral legendary items and ancestral uniques that are dropping in World Tier 4. I think we can zoom in on the top one here, where we can see we've got a little like some Roman numerals at the end of it, 2. That indicates that this pair of gloves has 2 greater affixes on it. And when you actually go and pick it up, we can take a look at the tooltip of the item itself, and we can see that intelligence here is highlighted, and so is critical strike damage. And these roll at the max roll. And I think we've got a comparison kind of between a standard version. So on the left is a non-greater version of a dagger. You've got, say, 74 dexterity, and maybe it rolled between 70 and 84. But on the right, we've got a greater version of dexterity, and that's going to always give you 126, which is 1.5 times the 84. Same with the critical strike damage down at the bottom. So if you find the dagger on the right, that's a really good one. I mean, not only do you have 2 greater affixes, you also max roll the attack speed in between. That is a great base item to start building through the tempering system on. I think we've got the next topic to talk about is masterworking. Masterworking is a late game crafting system that we're going to use to upgrade the items. So once you kind of find a really good base item, maybe it has some greater affixes on it, and then you've tempered on the affixes that you want. Hey, you found the exact affixes that are specific to your build that you've attached onto it. Now you're really pushing into that late game content. It's time to start masterworking. And Masterworking has 12 ranks where you can upgrade the current affixes on your gear. So this isn't going to change any of the affixes like Enchanting or like Tempering does. This is just going to take the current ones and then upgrade them through 12 ranks.
This is kind of like the old gear upgrade, right?
Similar, yes. However, both Masterworking and Tempering are replacing the old gear upgrade system. The previous system, you just kind of upgraded the item power and the values went up by a bit. These two systems replace that, and now you're going to be able to customize them and then masterwork them. So the 12 ranks of Masterworking, as opposed to the 5 of the old system, most of the ranks are going to increase all of your affixes on the gear by a small amount. But then every 4 ranks, so rank 4, 8, and 12, are going to upgrade a single affix by a large amount. So here's an example. The ring on the left is rank 2 Masterworking. You can see that right up there by the item power. It says Masterworking 2 out of 12. Let's focus in on like the maximum life affix there. So on the left at rank 2, you see we've got 880 bonus maximum life. And so we take it, we masterwork it up to rank 3, and then that will upgrade that to 920 maximum life. So a little bit of an improvement. But then once we hit rank 4, we actually get a much larger increase in maximum life. It goes from 920 all the way up to 1,120, while the other affixes on the gear stay static because they didn't roll randomly because we're only hitting 1. To Joe's point earlier about we still have some in development. This is in development content. It's not final, as the watermark says. The tempered affixes at the bottom, the Golem active cooldown reduction and the Bone critical strike damage, those also would be being upgraded and are eligible to have this this larger bonus. But in this particular screenshot example, those numbers didn't change, but they will change in the final, and there's a chance
also get affected. Yeah,
they'll be included just like all the rest of them. As you go through it, you're gonna get kind of 3 of these effects at rank 4, 8, and 12. And they can all go on the same one. So if you get really, really lucky and you really needed a lot of maximum life, you might get just a ton of maximum life every time that increases. Or it could be on one of your tempered affixes. You could get tons of Golem cooldown reduction if that's the kind of build that you're looking for. And once you fully masterworked an item, if it didn't really pan out the way you wanted to, the random rolls didn't quite go your way, you are able to reset it and try it again, but you will kind of lose all the materials that you've invested into it, but you can try that again. It doesn't completely lock you out of it. And if you do get that right, you find something that's got critical strike damage, and then you hit all 3 times on it, super upgraded, that's going to be like one of the best items in the game that probably no one else has one exactly like that because you really needed to hit the right one every time. That's going to be a really powerful item that is going to be very memorable when you get all that coming together. I think we've got an example here to really highlight all of these systems taken together. So on before, this was that boned one restoration that we talked about right at the beginning. We talked about paring down the affix list to just more simple intelligence damage and vulnerable damage. And on the right, we can see it after it has been tempered. So we've got bone spirit damage. We've got chance for a bone splinter projectiles to cast twice. And then we can see intelligence has been highlighted in blue. That means it's had 1 of the upgrades for masterworking. And the damage stat on here has been upgraded twice. That's why it's in yellow when we got up to masterworking 12. And you can see how we've taken this progression, this item progression. So here, once you got it all the way up to masterworking 12, this is really kind of the pinnacle of what items can be in our new itemization world.
So 2 things I want to call out. 1, masterworking works on unique items.
Correct.
Yes. So some of those really, really cool affixes that can appear on unique items, not the power of the unique item, but a lot of like the really specific unique affixes. Those all benefit from the masterworking process as well, which are really significant, right? So I think that there's something really, really fun there. Also, you can make sure that like when some of these unique items are dropping, they also can have greater affixes attached to them. So those same unique affixes that we're talking about, like that is huge. Like now you get an extra 50% value on top of that. Yeah. So like you get 50% value on top of the unique item affix, and then on top of that you masterwork it. It can get really, really bonkers.
All right, well, I clarify something. I know it's gonna be a lot of questions that people have on greater affixes.
Yes.
So greater affixes, the way that you get them is you can only get them from things that drop. So you're actually looking for that moment when you kill the mob, kill the enemy, the loot drops. That's the exciting moment that we're targeting. Enchanting is still going to exist. You can still enchant your affixes like normal on those 3 ones that drop. You cannot enchant into a greater affix. You can enchant out of a greater affix. So if you choose to, if you've got like a 1 greater affix item, you can enchant that greater affix to something else, but it won't change to another greater, and you can't change anything into a greater. It's all about killing monsters, finding that moment that is really exciting when the item drops, seeing if that works for you. So I just wanted to clarify that on how enchanting works and kind of what we're going for.
Right. And one thing I want to call out as well that we did talk about already, and that is there's a lot of other changes that we haven't actually discussed here that you'll see when you play in the PTR. But one of them I think is really cool is we actually add a bunch of other new baseline rare affixes that can appear on items that like players haven't seen before.
Yes.
So there's as an example of a few of these, we have like Fury per second. Can appear on items, which is very, very exciting and very interesting for my barbarian friends. Yeah, it's very transformative. Like there's a number of other ones like life per hit. Is now something that players can find as you go through the experience. Like, are there any that you think are kind of cool, or
and also ones that are cool and powerful that appear in different slots. So previously, weapons almost always had bonus damage of some sort. We've extended that, so a lot of weapons can now have resource cost reduction. They can have bonus attack speed and other things that increase your output through not just saying damage to a certain way. More interesting ways of increasing your output.
We'll jump into class changes really quick.
So we've got kind of 3 big goals for class updates. We've got a lot going on. I'm going to try and breeze through a little quick in the interest of time. The first one is going through a very high volume of meaningful class updates. And what I mean by meaningful is, not just moving numbers up and down on things that exist, but kind of either updating systems of how things interact at a systemic level, or adding things that are really, really powerful and actually going to move the needle and change how you interact with the class or the skill or the legendary or whatever we're changing. Next one is making flat damage effects more viable. So by flat damage, I'm talking about things like dust devils, earthquakes, dancing bolts, all these things. And last but not least, opening up designs to be more generally useful. We're going through classes across the board and going and looking for ways that we can open up things. So you're going to find that things that were a little more restrictive, we're going to try and make interact with more different pieces. So something may have only talked to core skills, now it can be any skill, things like that, where we're trying to make things less conditional so that you can mix and match things a lot more often. So first, let's talk about uniques. So in Season 4, you're going to be getting double the normal amount of uniques added to the game. Normally, every class gets 1. Every class is going to be getting 2 this time. So again, more content. We're also adding a new Uber unique here, Tyrael's Might. This is a defensive-oriented unique. It's going to be a chess piece. You can see the stats there. Lots of resistance-oriented things and damage reduction. By the way, in this new world, damage reduction is going to be much harder to come by. So it's actually a lot more special that it exists here. And the special power of this is that when you're at maximum life, so when you have the entire life bar full, you're going to be shooting out projectiles very similar to the artillery shrine. So you can see here kind of in action, you can see that sometimes he's attacking and it's not going off, and then as he heals up, you get those bolts that's hitting enemies. It's really, really flashy and cool. So yeah, class updates. Like I mentioned before, we're really looking to move the needle on these. We are still going to be having a number of changes, quite a few of just things going up and down for tuning. But we're also looking at updating some systems and designs. So some examples here. Skill tag updates. So we're not only doing this on the sorceress, but on other classes as well. But this is the one example I want to give. One of the pain points that sorceress has always had is that they have kind of core skills and then mastery skills. Mastery skills are things like firewall, meteor, things like that. And the mastery skills, we're always kind of second class to the core skills because we had a lot of things that scale core skill damage, but not mastery skill damage. So we've updated our skill tags and kind of changed things around so that they make more sense. So you're going to see more skill tags added to things across the board. And the example here is that mastery skills will also just have the core skill tag. They'll be considered both mastery and core skill. So all your core skill damage bonuses, interactions, all that stuff will just work now. Yeah, so now some other examples. Frozen Orb on the Sorceress is getting a lot of love. Before, when you cast it, it would go an exact set distance and then blow up, but now it's going to go exactly where you point it at it to with your cursor. And next, Necromancer. I've been talking for a while about Necromancer minions and how we're going to make them better. We're delivering on that in Season 4. The first change is that they're going to inherit 100% of the player's stats. So, your crit chance, crit damage, all those things, they're just going to inherit it from you, so they're going to scale way better with you, the player. And this is not only going to apply to Necromancer minions, but all minion types in our game. Things like Druid Wolves are also going to be inheriting this, and you're going to get a pretty big power bump. Took a look at the Book of the Dead and basically revamped everything. All the upgrades almost are getting some type of either number or big functionality change, and I'm going to be going through some examples there. But it's just going to be a lot more punchy. We're not only looking for effectiveness here, like making things stronger, but we also like the rule of cool, where the things that are awesome and look cool and are visual are going to stand out more. And so we're trying to do that as much as we can. So next, let's talk about game balance. So as I kind of alluded to earlier, the landscape of everything is changing pretty drastically, right? Itemization is going to be changing a lot of how player power works and how things work in the game. We've got a lot of class updates that are going to be changing how things are. You can expect a pretty big shakeup of just how all the different classes and builds perform. It's going to be a brave new world really here. But normally we promised a while back that we're going to do lists of everything that's perceived as a nerf. I'm not going to be going through every single thing today. You'll be able to see everything in the patch list on the PTR, and that's mostly in the interest of time, just because there's so much change that's happening. But I am going to give you, a snippet to do good on that promise of kind of how the game is now, and some things that you can expect that are going to be lowered in power in the future. So some examples here. Generally, Tibolt's Will, everyone's favorite pants, right? And not only is it really good because the effect is good, but also it's damage on pants, which makes it really, really good. That damage amount is being reduced. Same with Banished Lord's Talesman. Both of these uniques are insanely powerful. They're still going to be really good after this, but the damage is just being lowered so that other things can be competitive. Next, the Barbarian, everybody's favorite charging class. First thing that we're doing is, many of you may not know this, but when we launched the game, we actually gave them 10% inherent damage reduction. This was back when melee classes in general and the Barbarian were having trouble in the early game. Our game balance has changed radically since then, and we don't feel like they really need this anymore. And we don't want them to have an inherent advantage over all the other classes in the game anymore. So that's going to be removed. And even like I mentioned before when Charles was talking, damage reduction in general is going to be much more rare and special. You're not just going to find it on any defensive stat. When you see it, it's going to be something that you're going to really value because it's hard to come by. And we also think Barbarians are still going to be really good in this regard because their skill tree has a lot of it. Their skills like Challenging Shout have it. So I think they're going to be fine, but we're just removing this extra part. Also, we're reducing the effectiveness of Charge, Hammer, the Ancients, and Unbridled Rage. All three of these things have been incredibly powerful. Some things like Unbridled Rage have kind of been stamping out competing things for a long time just because it's so good. Our goal here is not to remove these from the game or make these builds not viable at all. They're going to be reduced, but I still think they're going to be really powerful and effective. And next, we're going to go over to the Sorcerer. We got a couple bug fixes here. We have more bug fixes than this, but this is just some that I wanted to call out. The first one, we had one where the evade cooldown reduction affix was triggering off of unstable currents casts. And so what this basically meant was you equip those boosts to have evade cooldown reduction, and then you use unstable currents, and you had infinite uptime on teleport evades, which made you just teleport around forever. This has been fixed, so now it's only going to work with intentional casts now, as it was intended to. And the next one is Isu's Ferocity. This is a key passive on the Sorcerer that used to apply its critical strike damage to all damage types, but it was the fire key passive. Now it's only going to apply to fire damage, as it was intended to. All right, so now let's get to the fun part, class updates. So I'm going to be going through all the different classes here and just showing 1 to 2 examples of kind of the ideas of things that we're changing. Again, lots more than what you're going to see, but kind of giving you an idea of what to expect in the direction that we're going here. So first we'll start with the Barbarian. So I like Dust Devils. I've liked them for a long time, and not just things like Dust Devils, but all those types of extra affixes that spawn things. So here's an example of Wind Slasher. This is a legendary that we updated. So it's the Double Swing legendary that spawns Dust Devils. Before it was you would cast Double Swing twice, and you go in and out and in and out, and every other time you make a Dust Devil, right? Pretty cool. We're updating this now, so every single time that you cast Double Swing, it does a Dust Devil. And instead of every other time spawning 1, every other time spawns 3. Druid, for example, a thing that has been long complained about to me is that last rate isn't up to par to other things. So there on the left is what you can see exists today, where the upgrades for last rate are, the first one is you heal for a little bit for every hit, and it's doubled when you crit. And then the next upgrade is that its initial strike crits and does a little bit more damage. We're just merging those together. So both of those combined is going to be your first last rate upgrade. And now we added a second upgrade there, where every time that last rate crits, all of your shapeshifting skills are going to deal more damage for 10 seconds, up to 40%. So now we're adding a very strong, potent, multiplicative damage bonus buff after last rate. So now, last rate, it's going to give you invulnerability, life leech, crit, and then a potent damage buff for a while after you cast it. So then if you can cooldown reduction on it, you can keep that buff rolling and actually have a build going on. Next, the Sorceress. So here, instead of just text, I'm actually going to show you some videos. The first one is going to be showing that Frozen Orb change that we talked about. here. So basically you can see here that where the person is targeting with their cursor is where the frozen orb is going to explode. So now you can make it point blank, you can make it far away. You know, it's going to be wherever you go. And for you controller players, this is going to interact just like other skills where it just goes to an enemy, and if there's nothing nearby, it just goes a set distance before blowing up. Next, we're going to be talking about the unique. So prefacing this unique a little bit before we show the video, the basic idea is conjurations are cool and frozen orb is cool. And what's going to happen with this unique is frozen orb is going to have a chance when it explodes to spawn conjurations, and then anytime that your conjurations attack, they have a chance to throw frozen orbs at enemies. So now we're going to see this in action here. So it's called Fractured Winter Glass, and this video is just the person casting frozen orb with this unique. So at first it's like, okay, it's fine, you see a couple conjurations, right? But then as you go on, you can see that the frozen orbs are making more of them, and then the conjurations are also throwing out more frozen orbs. Next, let's move on to the rogue. So we're also updating some class mechanics and other things. Inner Sight has kind of been eclipsed by other things in our game, right? When we first made Inner Sight, you know, it triggered off of trying to, this idea that you're going to target a single enemy, pick on that enemy, and build up this gauge, and then you have unlimited energy, and unlimited energy was supposed to be this really crazy, rare thing that was not, you know, going to happen very often. It turned out that's not really the case through itemization and other things. You can kind of solve resource a lot easier nowadays.
Yeah, it's fun to do that too.
Yeah, and it's fun. We want people to do that. So we have to update our other systems in accordance to that, which is kind of what we're doing here. So now you don't only have to hit the marked enemy, but you can charge up Inner Sight off of everything. So as you're blowing up waves of enemies, you still want to make sure you're hitting the one that's targeted, but now you'll get a little bit of gauge off of any enemy that you hit. And now in addition to that, the payoff is better. So not only are you going to get that unlimited energy still, but you're also going to get a 25% crit chance boost. So now you're going to be hitting harder when you are in Inner Sight mode. So now there's actually a damage component there too, in addition to the unlimited energy. Next, Necromancer. So like I said, Book of the Dead is getting upgrades. I kind of picked one slice from each part, from each minion type. So here you can see your Skeletal Reapers, the wind-up attacks now can reduce one of your active cooldowns by a pretty chunky amount. 3 seconds is insane, but there'll be a number that'll make sense there. Maybe it is 3. Next one for the mages, you know, one of their upgrades used to be that they've made frozen enemies vulnerable, and now they just make everything vulnerable. So actually, if you want cold mages to solve vulnerable for you, you pretty much can, just with this upgrade. And last but not least, we have your Iron Golem. So Iron Golem, now that when you tell it to go somewhere and do that slam attack where it pounds the ground, it'll also pull in enemies, very similar to Corpse Tendril. So it's not as required, you know, to put that on your bar. You have another way to kind of get that effect. Another thing I didn't put on the slide that I want to call out with Golems that'll make players happy. Golem now, while you're CC'd or at any time, when you activate it, it's going to make both your Golem and you unstoppable. So now you have another source of unstoppable on the Necromancer for minion builds. So next, like I was saying before, flat damage effects, Dust Devils, and Earthquakes are going to be your friends now. So before, these legendaries did not scale very well. And what I mean by that is that the damage that they did was fixed. So if you got like a Dust Devil or Earthquake or whatever, you got that legendary like level 25, the damage that it did was just a number, and that number didn't really go up with you or scale with you in a meaningful way. Now, under the hood, all of these things are going to be scaling based off your weapon damage, which means that these things will scale with you as a player and be much more viable now. And I believe we can zoom in on this example I give. So this one is Dancing Bolts. I'm actually running this legendary right now, my Lightning Storm Druid. So you can see that, you know, it's the same legendary on each side. This is me just changing out my weapon while I have this legendary equipped. This is in Season 4, so you can see it does an amount of damage on the left, you know, about 5,400 there. Now that number on the right, I didn't get a new legendary, I didn't change it, I didn't do anything except change my weapon, and that increased the damage that these Dancing Bolts are going to do. So when you get these legendaries now, they're going to scale with you and do quite a bit more damage and be punchy as you go into the late game. All right, so last but not least is opening up designs. Like I talked about, one of our goals here, make things more generally useful, less restrictions. We can zoom in here. I have 2 examples. One is Azurath here on the left, a unique sword. So 2 things going on here. First, you can see before, it was that your core skills have a chance to freeze enemies and deal a bunch of damage to them. On the right, we've removed the core skill requirement, and now any of your skills can have a chance to freeze enemies. So this means you can use it on, you know, like charge and other similar things like that, where, you know, maybe you want to make a build around something that's not a core skill to proc this, you totally can, or it's just going to proc more often, you just play normally. Second thing you'll notice is on the left it says Barbarian only. We just removed that restriction. So now any class that can use a sword can use Azurath. Again, we're just trying to look for places where there was restrictions, and when we can, we're just removing them. Next one is Opportunist. This one I'm really excited about on the Rogue. I think I'm going to play a Rogue this season. So on the left is the old version, where it says when you break stealth with an attack, you can drop stun grenades, right? And those grenades deal damage and stun enemies. On the right, we've removed a lot of these restrictions and made it more useful. So now it's when you enter or break stealth, and you don't need to break stealth when you attack. So anytime that you cast stealth or go into stealth, you're going to get 2 sets of these, and it's just going to be when you go in and out, and you just get stun grenades. You also notice that this is a tuning thing, but the stun duration on stun grenades has been buffed. It's a second now. And then we also did a thing that I'm really excited about here, where every single stun grenade legendary will increase the damage of your grenade skills, and all of them are going to have this. So if you want to make a stun grenade build, if you collect, you know, the 4 or 5 of these legendaries that kind of combo together, every one is going to incrementally increase your grenade's damage as well, to a point where, you know, you'll be doing a lot more meaningful damage in your build. All right, last but not least, we've got hardcore updates. So for you hardcore players, Elixir of Death Evasion is being removed from the game. It's dying, and it's not coming back, just like you will in hardcore. We've also redesigned the Flame Shield enchantment. So before, it used to be a cheat death mechanic, where when you took fatal damage, it would, you know, proc and save you. Now it's going to automatically activate when you lose a certain amount of life, and then it has an internal cooldown on that. So we've heard from the community kind of loud and clear, they really want hardcore to be hardcore, and so we're going to deliver on that. Now you actually have to be careful. The Sanctuary is a very scary place, and you won't have those fail safes to keep you alive anymore.
Now about endgame specific items.
Sure, thanks. So a couple things I want to talk about first. We're going to talk about some new content stuff in just a minute, but there's some other things that are also changing at the same time. You'll see on the PTR, we've made adjustments to world tiers, and that we've changed the XP modifier that you get for opting into certain world tiers. So the reason why we're doing this, we want to get players to endgame a little bit faster. So we've made an adjustment where World Tier 2 now goes, instead of getting you 20% bonus XP, gives you 50% bonus XP. World Tier 3 now gives you 150% bonus XP as opposed to the 100% you got before. And then World Tier 4 gives you 250% bonus XP instead of the 200% that you got before. So again, we want to get players into the space where they're getting a chance to play with these new items, they're getting a chance to see some of the new content we're going to be talking about in just a minute, and experience more of the end game, and have a little less emphasis on the level up process being like a lot longer as it is today. So this is our stated intent. We want more players to be able to reach level 100. We want them to get more of these level 925 items. We want them to start seeing more greater affixes. We want them to engage in tempering and masterworking. We want them to see everything else the game has to offer. We want to make sure that we're removing some of the restrictions to make that possible, and we're continuing to think about that as we move forward. This is just all of the things we're talking about today are just one more step on the journey of Diablo 4. We're going to continue, as Adam already called out, continue to make the game better based on feedback, and just continue to add more cool stuff that we think is great for the game, and also that we're hearing from our player base, our community, would be really, really great for the game experience. So with that quick little thing out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the first major update we have planned that you get a chance to see on PTR. And that is we made a significant update to Helltide. Now, I think that everyone will remember that in Season 3, we made an adjustment to Helltide timing, where now they're basically up for 55 minutes out of every hour. There's a 5-minute gap between each Helltide experience. And we think that that's great. Players are able to get better access to Forgotten Souls and all the gameplay there. But we also, like looking back on Season 2 and the Blood Harvest regions where the armies of Lord Zir were marching across sanctuaries. We all recall from quarter 4 of last year, and capturing people and draining them of blood. That was we thought that was a really fun, frenetic, like social experience in the overworld. Like it's just a blast, kind of go through, kill vampires, save people, and summon Bloodseekers as well along the way, and getting good rewards as you go. It was a fun experience. In Season 3, we had a different take on that idea with the form of Arcane Tremors. Players can go and engage in a number of different small activities and traps, and also managed to summon Heralds of Malthus in a group and go ahead and get more like tuning stones and more and governing stones, and continue to just get more rewards from that experience. And again, we thought that was pretty fun, right? So we want to take some of these ideas back to Helltide, and I'll be actually I think it might be even easier if we could just throw to Ruben potentially, who I think might actually be able to be in Helltide right now.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Looks like that's the case. So we want to take some of these ideas back to Helltide. Hello, yes, you're being destroyed. We want to take some of these ideas back to Helltide and make sure that our overworld, exciting, demonic invasion experience that players get to go through here is just more fun to engage with.
Was that just a giant hellworm belching a bunch of enemies at?
That was a giant hellworm belching a bunch of enemies up. So a bunch of things have changed. So one of the things that, let me dive in. So one of the things that we did is we add this new idea of a threat system. Now you'll see the eagle-eyed among you can look to the left of the minimap. Thank you, Ruben. Can look to the left of the minimap, and you'll see a horizontal bar segmented in 3 pieces next to that kind of like half-completed pentagram there. As the players are killing demons in Helltide areas, they are slowly growing their threat over the course of the experience. And as they do that, they're going to find like more like ambushes. They're going to find more creatures coming and trying to kill them as they kind of like roll through the space. And they're gaining threat by doing anything. If they're opening tortured gifts, if they are killing like regular monsters and elites, they're always earning more threat for the things that they do. The armies of hell are paying more attention. So as the player is going to go through this process, they are going to start feeling like more pressure as they go through the experience. Now, once the player has gotten towards the end of this, like they actually have, when the armies of hell have been fully alerted, you'll hear a tone, which I think we might actually hear soon potentially. Well, I guess we'll have to see. But you'll hear a tone alerting you to the fact that the armies of hell are basically coming for your blood, right? They're coming for you at this time. And in that case, you're going to see that there's going to be a new creature type that's going to appear, which we'll be able to get to in just a second. Some of the other big changes that are happening in Helltide alongside this, while we kind of wait for some of this stuff to happen, is we've reduced the level requirement or the world tier requirement for Helltide. So you'll start to see them in lower world tiers now. So they're a great way for you to level up. Okay, it looks like the forces of hell have been alerted. So now there's going to be like it's going to be almost a little more of a holdout. More invasions and ambushes are going to start to occur at this time, and it's going to have a kind of cap-off event towards the end. We'll talk about as it arrives. But you can see right now the threat is draining while this event is occurring. So you kind of like reach that maximum threshold. The minions of hell are coming for you. You're going to be kind of fighting pretty hard for this stuff. But it's a great way to get like access to a lot of elites. Once this bar is drained once again, you can start building it up by again going out, doing more things inside the Helltide experience. You're going to get more opportunities for more cinders and more of these ambushes again as time goes on. So we're getting towards the end of this now. Oh yeah,
should be in this Hellborn here.
Yeah. So yes, and now one of the Hellborn has managed to appear. Hellborn they're very much a similar creature to some of the Bloodseekers that we've seen in the past. These are adventurers who have fallen to the depravities of hell. They're now serving their infernal masters. They have great drops, like they'll drop like legendary equipment, and they will also drop summoning materials for Lord Zir. Moving forward, so there's more ways to get some of those mats as you go through the experience. And that's actually one of the other things that we did as part of our general updates is we kind of wanted to go through and do a pass to make it easier to find more of those boss summoning materials, like from doing like different kinds of content. So while obviously you can go to Helltides and open tortured gifts to get living steel pretty quickly, we want to make sure that there's like if you find like a treasure goblin, there's a chance now the treasure goblin could drop a random boss summoning material. When you go and you open bounty caches or whisper caches at the end of a bunch of whispers runs. Another thing that we're doing as part of this is that we are adding a new boss. We're adding Andariel. So you can now fight Andariel. She is summonable by defeating the Beast in Ice and Lord Zir, and she's got the same drop table as Duriel. So we want to make sure that players have a couple different ways to kind of gain access to these really, really powerful uniques that Duriel drops, but also for that shot at getting those uber uniques, without always requiring players to go back to those same places. Yep. So between opening up the options of how you gain access to materials you can use to go farm uber uniques a little bit earlier, to like now saying, hey, go do Nightmare Dungeons, go do some overworld content, Helltide content to gain access to Beast and Ice and Lord Zir, you can go farm Andariel there. We think that's going to be like a really, really fun change. And Andariel's a really cool fight. I think we might actually have like a quick little shot of the summoning for Andariel, as we all know her and love her. There she is. Wow. She's back. She's tough. it's going to be.
I want to say the fight's been updated too. It's not exactly the same as what we did before.
Yeah,
so.
the designer's been very excited about this fight and very excited about Indariel for a while, bringing her back into the equation. So yeah, she's going to be a lot of fun to summon. That's not even all the things that we're changing with regards to bosses. There's more stuff that we're doing as well. So one of the things that we're going to be talking about in just a minute is a new feature called Pit. And inside the pit, you're going to be earning Stygian stones to be able to use to summon higher level versions of all of these bosses as you go deeper into the experience. So we think this is extremely exciting. It provides another way for players to express their build strength, and going and fighting these bosses are going to provide much greater rewards. In fact, when you kill one of these new, very powerful, tormented versions of these bosses out there, they're going to give you one resplendent spark the first time you kill any of them. So of all the ones that you can summon, first time you kill one of them, you're going to get a resplendent spark for you to use in the future. And that is not all that we're doing. Obviously, I mentioned the pit. We made a number of adjustments in the form of this new content type that we're calling the Artificer's Pit. And what it effectively is a way for players to go and once players have managed to complete a tier 45 nightmare dungeon, which is filled with level 100 monsters, they're going to gain access to a quest that's going to send them around the world looking for rune shards. And rune shards are just this new material that players will collect to open up Artificer's Rifts. And they drop from elite creatures. They drop all over the place. It's pretty easy to find the materials you'll need to start this process. And when you have a number of them, you can bring them back to this obelisk in Karagar and kind of use that to form your first pit run effectively. And there's hundreds of levels of this, and the monsters that you will begin fighting immediately are all right at level 100. Do we have a
video of it?
Yeah, let's see what we got. So you have a Ruben kind of near there?
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, we have the live play.
With that awesome debug text.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, with the awesome debug text. Everybody, it's PTR. Look forward to it. We're talking about dev stuff right now. This is what it looks like sometimes. So, okay. So we see here that Ruben's coming. He's already done the rift before. He's going to go ahead and just open up a tier 1 Artificer's Rift. And we'll see how this goes. So he's going to spend 1 rune shard to do this. That's going to open up right here in Karagar. And we're going to go. There's a little bit of a stacking issue there. Yeah, we're going to have that fixed too. Okay, so that's that feedback, everybody. And you're going to dive into your first pit run. Now, each pit experience is it's a randomized layout filled with random monsters. There's no nightmare affixes like what we have in afflictions like we have in Nightmare Dungeons. Instead, the players really just pushing themselves up against this timer as fast as they can, trying to complete it. So as you're going through this, you'll see it's very similar to a lot of things that we did in the Abattoir Zir. We want to make sure this is a quick, punchy experience as you're playing and you're killing monsters. You're not going to be getting any loot from the drops. That stuff's not here to slow you down. It's just about pushing as hard as you can. Now, a couple of the major differences between what we've done in the Artificer's Pit relative to what we did in the Abattoir Zir is first, in the Abattoir Zir, when a player died while going through the experience, they were immediately ejected from the Abattoir Zir. Their run was over in the case of death. Here, we want to allow for a little bit more, a few more problems to occur, a few more errors, from the player as they're kind of going through. So that every time you die, what actually ends up happening is you add 30 seconds to your timer. So you're less and less likely to beat the timer. And that's important. At the end of the timer, you're not ejected from the pit. If you don't actually manage to keep time with the timer, you just don't get the mastery objective completion. And the mastery is tied to masterworking materials that you'll be using to go through the masterworking process for your items. In fact, the pit, as Charles referenced earlier, is the place you need to go in order to obtain the bulk majority of those masterworking materials. So while you can get to the end of the experience and you will get rewards for having defeated the boss by the end of a pit run if you don't manage to finish the timer in mind, you won't get access to those materials. So why is this? So one of the things we recognize that we think is very unique to Diablo and to SARPGs in general is that a lot of times players are making efficiency bets about how they choose to engage with content. They're deciding, okay, I can kill monsters of this level fairly easily and without much risk. How much further beyond this level can I push in order to maximize the rewards I'm getting from the runs that I'm doing, and while also maintaining good cadence and managing my risk? And that's kind of that fun sweet spot that we think works really well. AOZ was meant to tap into a little bit of this, but also AOZ was designed to be an extraordinarily challenging piece of content from the get-go. Here, the pit starts in a somewhat more reasonable place. We understand that tier 45 Nightmare Dungeons are not the most challenging content in the entirety of the game. It goes up much higher than that, and the pit does as well. As the pit can go well past tier 100, so you can be fighting level 200 monsters, level 250 monsters as you go deeper and deeper into the experience. So, okay, it looks like Ruben's making pretty good time going through this. I think we saw earlier that Ruben actually jumped into a portal to move to a different area.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, you can't finish an entire pit run inside that first area. You kind of are expected to move on, but you also don't need to kill everything in either of these areas either. There's a good amount of creatures in both spaces. You can kind of make up the time that you need. So now he's gonna go and he's gonna fight the boss in just a moment. Now the second thing that's different about the pit that we you start to see a little bit. There's different from what we've done in AOZ in the past. Is that occasionally during a pit run, you're going to be confronted by another major boss or villain that you've seen. You'll see their echo occasionally appear just for a moment to perform a big attack, big sweeping attack, or that you're going to have to avoid or deal with while you're dealing with the boss you're already fighting. And this is happening throughout the duration of the pit as well. And as you go deeper, you'll see this occasionally a little more frequently at the same time. So these are just another complication, another thing that you're going to be thinking about while you're playing and trying to remember the sorts of patterns. Eventually, you'll see a couple of these appearing as well. So you'll be dealing with that that kind of pattern following as you play deeper and deeper into the pit.
Yeah, so it's kind of like Elias, for instance, like a shade of Elias can
appear. So you can come and do an attack.
Just do an attack in the middle
of
a
shade of Lilith can appear as well.
A shade of Lilith can also appear.
These are definitely tough things as you go deeper and deeper, and eventually you might see a couple of them as well in combination. So here Ruben killed the boss, got a number of different drops. There's a bug in this version that we're looking at right now where the items are dropping are not actually ancestral, but that's not the case when players be playing on the PTR. You all see ancestral items as the rewards for killing the boss here at the end. And then after that, when you open the chest, you can see there's a bunch of obdusite that popped out of it, which is a masterworking material. I think he got 5, from the first run. So as you go deeper in the pit, there's basically 3 tiers of masterworking materials that you're going to be able to earn through. So there's the Opticite, there's the Inglith, and then there is the Neath Iron. So these are available as you go deeper and deeper into the pit experience. I think Opticite right now is like tiers 1 to 20. You know, you'll be getting like amounts of Opticite. As you go from like 21 to 40, you get amounts of Inglith, and as you go to Neath Iron and beyond, as you go into like like 40 and beyond, you start seeing more and more Neath Iron. And these things can also be like condensed down to lower level materials if you need them for resetting a masterwork item starting at a lower level. And again, as you're going, you're getting these Stygian stones as you play. You know, like as you get deeper into the experience, you're going to get those. You're going to get the ability to go fight those level 200 tormented versions of these bosses. So like a level 200 tormented version of Barshan, you know, and so on and so forth. All of these bosses have a higher chance to drop uber unique item as well. So now there's even more reason to want to go get some of these creatures on farm, and they have better drops. They more prolific in terms of the drops. They drop many more items as you're going through this. So these are going to be huge challenges for players to go and try to chase again just in season 4.
In chat. So we'll start off with one that we have here from the forums. This is from Iggy. What will happen to current items after this rework? Because obviously we're now changing a lot of things from our past items going into season 4.
Yeah, so all of the items that you currently have on your characters or on the Eternal Realm will be flagged as what are called legacy items. And this means that they are not able to interact with the new systems of tempering or masterworking. They'll continue to function as they are, so that they're not going to break, they're not going to be rerolled or changed in any way. They're just kind of say, hey, this was an item that, you know, in the old system, but if you want to engage with the new systems and find those greater affixes and temper all the cool new affixes onto it and do masterworking, of course, you're going to need to go out and find new items.
J Corsair 19, does the masterworking just increase the total range of the roll, or does it get you closer to a max roll?
So it increases the current value. So if you already had a max roll, it keeps on increasing. So as an example, you had an affix that could have rolled between 50 and 100, and you had a value of 90. Every time you increase it, it's going to increase that 90 by, or let's say you had it at 100, just to make the math easier, because quick math. If it was already at 100, the first masterworking upgrade will take it to 105. Even though the base roll range was just up to 100, you can continue progressing past that. If you had it, down at 50, it would go from 50 up to 55, and so on.
So I've seen a lot of people actually mention this in chat, and Riker also just mentioned this in chat, and they're asking, is it just me, or was the camera more zoomed out in the dev build? Actually,
oh, we didn't even talk about that.
Actually,
Okay, go ahead.
In season 4, the camera will be more zoomed out, and there will be an option. You can have what we had before, or you can zoom it out a little. So yes.
Yeah, there's a gameplay setting. It starts at the current default,
correct?
Which is what we have in Diablo 4 today. But we've been hearing the feedback. We did make a move. Joe Shelley helped a lot with this actually. Everybody helped a lot with this. We did make a move to like pull the camera out a little bit further. That's part of like a near far sort of like situation. So it's going to be available for you to see in the PTR.
Good eye. Good eye.
Update, yes, of course.
Yeah, and we forgot to say that. That was a really good one to talk about.
A lot of people mentioning loot filter. Which I know, like we had mentioned as well that we wanted to get through the itemization stuff. So
sure, I can talk a little bit about that. I think a lot of the desire for a loot filter in the current version of Diablo 4 stems from the problems that we initially mentioned with, we really do just flood you with items, and it's like sifting sand, right? You need to look through all these items, and the one response is, hey, a loot filter could automate all this. We think in this new itemization world where we are simplifying it in a lot of the ways we already discussed, reduced number of affixes, simpler affixes, the item power once you get to the late game always dropping at the max, will help to alleviate a lot of those concerns, and it will make parsing through the items a lot easier in this new system.
Dristren asks, I know Uber Uniques cannot be tempered, but can they roll greater affixes, and can they be mastercrafted?
Yes, on both accounts.
Yes.
Uniques can roll greater affixes, just the same as Ancestral Legendaries. It doesn't need to be Ancestral, so it's World Tier 4, same as before. Same concept with Uber Uniques, and even through the Resplendent Spark, the crafting system, there is a small chance that when you craft it, it comes with the Uber Unique comes with a greater affix, even when you craft it, just as if it would drop.
That's correct.
All right, I'm going to do one last question. This is from GTI 101. Will the aspect changes also apply to alternate characters? Do I need to level up my aspects on alternate characters, for example?
Aspects are partition bound. And what I mean by that is if you're playing a seasonal character and you want to play an alt on the seasonal realm, like that alt will also benefit from all the unlocks you've got within your Codex of Power. I do believe your first character.
There is a separation between hardcore and not hardcore characters.
That's correct.
As well.
That's correct.
Hardcore characters are kind of their own thing, even on the seasonal realm.
Yeah.
Awesome. So